Welcome back. Today what we're going to take a look at, we're going to review for the midterm exam for the Solidworks basics class. So let's get started. First of all, you'll find what you need if you go to Google Chrome or some browser that you're using, and just go to the V as in Victor, E-R, T as in Tom, A, N as in Nancy, U, X as in X-ray, and don't forget the 1.com. And then go to the exams file over to the right. Now, be aware for this midterm, you're not going to need any parts to download. You're going to build all of them. So right here, you'll find in the red column, the SOLIDWORKS Basics midterm. Go ahead and select it. Here you can see there's about 4 pages of information. This last drawing is basically, you're going to have to replicate that. And there's a little bit of extra credit you could get out of it as well. But essentially, you're going to start off, if you want to read these instructions, you could go in the pattern that I have laid out, or you could do it any way you like. There's probably a dozen ways you can do this test. I'll tell you right now, this is probably the way I'm showing you is probably the easiest for a novice user and the quickest. So we start off modeling the bottle, and that's this drawing right here. It's a simple 2.5 inches for the main section with a 1/2 inch neck, and the diameter is 2 inches, and it's shelled out. And then the cap is a little bit more challenging because there's not going to be any shell to it, but basically you're going to cut it out, and you're going to have to put a pattern, a circular pattern on it, as you can see there. And then you're going to have to recreate this drawing with the assembly. So essentially, you're going to, in between there, you're going to have to put these together inside the context of an assembly using bottom-up methods. Remember, we covered that in exercise 5, so if you want to review on that, you can. Otherwise, you can watch this video. I'm going to go through it rather quickly because it is a review video. Those of you who are in my class know you can't watch this video during class, so make sure you prepare for it in advance several times. You can practice it as many times as you like. The theory behind the test and that is that I'm not looking to see how well you could interpret my drawings. My drawings, by no stretch of the imagination, are not they're not very good. But I want to separate that. That's why I'm giving you the ability to review it. I want to make sure you know how to model, because once you can model this without the assistance of looking at a video or whatever, you can pretty much apply these techniques to virtually anything. And so let's begin. To start, we're going to go ahead and model this bottle. Now remember, you could download this, and then in the lower left it pops up, or yours might be in the upper right depending upon the browser you're using. And then you have the ability right here to rotate, or you could right click on it, and there's usually a rotate, and you just rotate it until you can see it upright. This may be a lot easier than students tilting their head. I see in my classes students forget how to do this and they tilt their head a lot. It's got to be hard on your neck. Anyhow, so here we have this bottle. Like I said, it's very simple. I'm going to start off with the new part file. And I would recommend the top plane as your starting point. That's because a bottle rests on a tabletop typically. So start with the top plane. And we're going to draw the base of the bottle, which is 2 inches in diameter. So I'm just going to go to the circle tool, smart dimension it. And if you don't smart dimension it, and when I check your test out, I will mark it up because you need to use the smart dimension tools. And that's discussed in earlier videos that I've had. Go to extrude boss base. It's 2.5 inches for the height, hit enter. Now you can select the top surface and start your sketch, and go to the circle tool, and right at the origin, drag out your next diameter. The next diameter is 1.5 inches. Remember that dimension because later on the hole that's going to go on the cap is going to be the same size. In real life, we would have tolerances or little gaps for this test because it's an intro class. We're not going to have that. Features, extrude boss, 0.5, and hit the green check. Now we could zoom up, we could go to the fillet tool. Now here's the thing, you could shell or you could fillet. These are the last 2 features. If we look at the drawing, we can see that the radiuses, there's 1, 2, 3, are all 100 thousandths, as well as the typical wall thickness. I would recommend doing the fillets first. That way you'll actually get a nice rounded internal edge. Otherwise you'll get marked off if it's not there. So I'm going to go to the fillet tool first and make sure you're putting in a radius 0.1, which is the default. You could select this face and this edge. One of the blunders that students make quite often is they select this top edge. There is no fillet on that top edge, so don't select it. If you accidentally selected it like this, just click on the edge again to deselect it, or hit escape and try again. All right, now I'm going to go through and we're going to shell this. And here's another area where it's probably number 2 on the top 10 lists of blunders that are made during this test. Students will go to the shell command. They have it set to 100 thousandths wall thickness, that's fine. And they just hit the green check mark. Don't do that. What will happen, it will shell the bottle out, but there will be no opening. And then if you try and shell it again, it'll fail. You'll actually get an error. And trust me, during an exam, you do not want that type of issue to have to deal with. There is a fix around it. You could either hit undo a few times, or I'll let you be the judge on how you want to fix that. But here is just avoid doing it, period. Just by selecting the top face, because that's the face that's going to be removed. That's what you're doing essentially. Hit the green check. Done. Now you can see the bottle. Now be aware, as I mentioned earlier, if you had put the fillets on after you shelled, this nice radius would not be here. You would actually have, it would be a straight edge. And later on in the drawing, you make a section view, so I could clearly see that error, and it's 20 points off. Any large errors like that, dimensional errors or feature errors that are missing, are 20 points. Small detailing errors, such as like maybe a note or something that's missing, is only 5 points. And then intermediate things would be like, for example, if you didn't, you're going to have to use a leader on a note, or actually for the detail view. And if you leave that out, that's 10 points. So that's kind of the structure, but most things, feature issues, dimensional issues, those are 20 points right off the bat. And you might think that's a lot, but remember, this test is worth 300 points total. So things does shed points very quickly if you don't practice this. So make sure you don't have that mistake. I'm going to hit cancel here. I just wanted to show that to you. Okay, now make sure you save that. And I'm just going to save it onto my desktop as the bottle. Go to File, New, and this one's going to be the cap, of course. Start a sketch. Select, just for consistency's sake, go with the top plane on this one too. Not as necessary, but it's a good idea to do it. Okay, I'm going to go to the circle tool. Now the cap is, instead of 2 inches in diameter, it's 1.9 inches for the largest size. So just, it shrinks down a little bit. So 1.9. And it's just to check to make sure you're paying attention when we do that. So go to Features, Extrude Boss. It's just the top portion we're going to make first, which is 0.1, which is the default. Just hit Enter. And now here is the #1 missed test issue. It's 20 points off. And it's almost every student knows how to put a fillet in, but it's forgotten for some strange reason. I'm not sure why, but I'm letting you know. That's the great thing about taking the time to watch this review video. I'm showing you where not to make the mistakes. Now, some might say, well, it's important that people make mistakes. Yes, it is. This, though, is a career. This is not something you want to make mistakes on. And if you're going to show this as a tool to get a job, you don't want to show that you made mistakes. You want perfection. Those dimensions have to be accurate. You can't be missing anything. So that is why it's so important to review this. Watch this video, try this 10 times. Actually, it should only take you 3 times, and you will become very good at taking this test in a decent amount of time. So anyway, go to the fillet tool and select this edge and hit the green check. Now rotate to the underside, start a sketch, and the next diameter just shrinks down a little bit to 1.8. 1.8. Now we go to features and extrude boss, and it goes a 1/2 inch deep. Now, some of you, and this actually happens to my best students, and this is not like a very common mistake, but it does happen, and it's typically my best students, because the best students are always looking for a shortcut, and not in a bad way, in a good way. You're just like, how could I combine features? And those of you who looked at that drawing or are looking at it right now might notice there's a hole for the cap. And remember that it's going to fit on the neck of the bottle, which was 1.5. So the hole is 1.5 diameter. And I'll see students actually draw that in before they start extruding this. So they have the 1.8 and the 1.5 diameter, and they extrude it out. And lo and behold, they make the void for the hole so that it could fit on the neck of the bottle. However, if you look carefully, it's not the same depth. So you can't do those simultaneously, at least not yet, to my knowledge. So make sure you separate them like this, because this is 0.5 for the depth. Now we could cut the hole in, start a sketch on that surface, and draw the next diameter, and this is going to match the neck, 1.5, and features, extrude, cut, 0.4. Now some of you might say, and I've had students say, where is the 0.4? I didn't see the 0.4 on the drawing. Well, the way drawings sometimes are created aren't exactly how you would like to see it, sadly. And that's the little trick in this one. You'll notice here is the 0.5 that shows the length of that 1.8 inch diameter extruding down. Now look at here, you have a difference of 0.1 that's called out for the actual 1.5 hole. So 0.5 minus 0.1 equals 0.4. And you're gonna, those of you who aren't familiar with drawings, that's what you're gonna see a lot of times. You don't always get the exact dimension you're looking for modeling off of a drawing if you're trying to model it up. So you have to do the math for it. Okay, now start a sketch. We're gonna start putting the ribs in. Start a sketch on this surface, and I'm gonna hit my space bar and go to the bottom. And from here, go to the sketch and the circle tool, and I'm going to get right on this quadrant and click to drag it and attach it there. I'm going to dimension that, even though it is 0.1 automatically because it went tangent to the outer edge and to the quadrants actually. Don't use that. That didn't lock it in. And also you'll notice that this floats. So you want that to lock in too. Two ways you could do it. You could draw a center line from that point to the origin, or you just hold Control as you select both points, and over here on the left, the selected entities should be 0.1, 0.2. The relation, you want vertical, and it aligns it. Now look at that, went from blue to black. That means it's fully defined. That's how all of your sketches need to be. If anything's underdefined when you turn into me, it gets marked off 20 points. So just be aware, everything should be fully defined. Okay, now go to Features, Extrude Boss Base, and you can hit Flip Direction. Now instead of blind, there's something better. You could just say up to next, and it will go up to that little lip underneath there of the 1.9 inch diameter top. Hit the green check. Now, this is the point where I've been teaching this lesson, or I should say this, having this test proctored for years. And this is where I've had students ponder at their desks for 45 minutes to an hour, and they can't figure out how to pattern it because they forgot. And that happens. Sometimes you could practice it several times and cannot recall how to pattern it. And when I would see them struggling, and I would just tell them, you know what, the pattern's only worth 20 points. Just keep moving. You could still make the rest of the bottle. You could make the assembly, make the drawing, and only mark off 20 points. You could still walk out with an A, because that's just considered one feature. In real life, it is obviously very important, but you'd be able to look up how to do a pattern. Anyhow, best is to practice this so you don't have that happen to you. Okay, so we have that feature. The feature is already selected because it's the last feature done, unless you hit Escape. Make sure you select it if it's not selected. Now we're going to pattern that. So go to the little arrow under linear pattern, find circular pattern. You're going to want equal spacing over here on the left, 360 degrees, and you're going to want 50 instances. Now, just select the surface it's going to pattern around. That's it. Hit the green check. So between the bottle and the cap, you've now earned, as long as you've done everything correctly, 100 points. It's 1/30 your test. The next part is the assembly. Now this is the only time I give so many points for something that's actually pretty basic. Creating the assembly is just starting a new assembly, dropping the bottle in, putting the cap on, mating it, and then exploding it. So it's really not tough, but there's a number of steps and it can be challenging. So let's begin. Let me save this as the cap. Now, I'm going to go to File, New. Now, if I had the bottle open, I could make assembly from part and start it off pretty easily that way, but I don't. So I'm just going to go to New, Assembly, and hit OK. Now, if you failed to save the parts, this next step, you would not see the bottle and cap listed. That would be blank, and you would, if you hit Control Tab, you'd be able to see, or I should say if you click down here, you'd be able to see, oh yeah, I have the bottle, the cap, but you just didn't save them. So they're like named as a default part 1, part 2, and it's not saved yet. So just make sure you click on them and save them if you have to. I already saved them, so they come up on this list readily. And now, when you're taking the test, I've had students like, what should I drop in first? And it's like flipping a coin, I suppose. You could think of, if you drop the cap in first, it's a little challenging to mount the bottle on the base of it. A little more challenging than what you'd expect. Really not too bad though. My recommendation is, imagine you're working in an assembly line. You have 2 boxes of bottles and caps. What would you grab first? And I'll tell you, when I ask my students this, 9 out of 10 will say, oh, I'll grab the bottle first. That's correct. Go ahead and select the bottle first, hit the green check, and it should drop in at the origin automatically when you hit that green check after you've selected it. If you click and drop it out there, that's fine too. Like I said, in exercise 5 a couple weeks ago, that if you hit the green check, it's always dropping your part's origin onto the origin of the assembly. That's a good strategy for modeling inside the assembly. Not all companies do that. Anyhow, all right, let's bring in the next part. So I'm going to go to Assembly, the tab here, Insert Component, and this time select the cap, and zoom out and drop the cap up there. Now, I've had students drop the cap down here, and they made it concentric from the hole to the neck, and it ends up inside the bottle, and then they're spending 15 minutes trying to figure out where it went, and it's actually inside the bottle. So just be careful not to do that. Now, you've learned in class that the mate tool here, you could select this surface and that surface, and they'll align concentric. Then you could select this surface here in the top of the bottle and align that coincident. I'm going to show you a trick that does both in one shot. And I really like to show these shortcuts, and I applaud my students who use them in class, because that's what makes you look expert, when you can do these little shortcuts. I don't, if you take the long route during a test, if you're being hired, it's not always the best thing. If they see you taking shortcuts, in some instances, it's like, wow, it shows a level of advanced knowledge of the software. So let's do this. Go to, you don't even have to go to Make. Let me show you the trick. The Alt key, hold Alt first down, and then grab this edge on the floor of the inside of the cap. Drag it to this edge up here. Make sure the edge highlights blue, not the whole. Look, if I go too far, the whole surface, well, it's not doing it now, it's locked in, which is good. But the whole surface for a minute lit up, but you don't want that. You just want this top edge to light up, so the blue ring should show up. If not, drag it away and try and drag it back. Now release it, and then release Control. And try and pull it away, drag it. You'll see it will spin in place, but it's It's mated. You just got a 2-for-1 mate deal. In fact, take a look at the feature tree. If you hit the little arrow to the left of the mates, I like to call it a folder, but it's not really a folder. It does contain your mates. It automatically got concentric and coincident simultaneously. So those types of shortcuts are really great to know. And if I were testing you and sitting there watching you, if I were looking to hire you possibly, and I saw you do that, you would be at the top of my list. So anyhow, all right, now let's go ahead and zoom out, and we have to explode this. So if you want, hit the space bar, and you could hit this little thing here, or just go to isometric, and now go to exploded view, click on the cap, and make sure you grab the Y arrow. Now the arrow should turn blue before you start dragging things. Click, drag it up, and you're going to drag it up about 1.5 inches. Like mine's 1.3, 1.4 works pretty well. And hit the green check. That's it. All right. If you make a mistake and you have to redo it, just be aware later on. Like, let me show you here. So if I go back to exploded steps, it reset it. It automatically reset. It's like, wait, what happened? But there's a method to this that's there. Go ahead. Let's say I'm gonna botch this one up. I'm gonna drag it down intentionally just to show you what's going on here. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and right-click up here and just collapse it so we can't see. So think of it as a little magic trick right here. Okay, so I have one bad, one good. Now, and I'm showing this to you for a reason because I have students make this mistake. So now I'm going to go, I have to save this, rebuild, it's safe to rebuild. And I'm going to go ahead and call this the med bottle for medicine bottle. And I'm going to go to File, Make Drawing from Assembly. And use the ANC landscape so you can print it out for me because I'll end up grading it, those of you in my classes. Hit OK. Now, we'll grab the front, drag it in. We'll unfold the bottom, click, and then you could give yourself an isometric if you drag it up here, click, and then hit the green check. And that's all we need for right now. Drag this over here. This looks pretty good. We got these. Okay. Now let's explode this bottle. You just simply click on it, and over on the left, you'll see show an exploded or modeled break state. So check that box, and all of a sudden you see it. And that one is correct. But if it doesn't look correct when you take this test, most likely you might have accidentally messed up. And it might look something like this. Let's say it's upside down. Looking on the left, this little area will enable you to flip-flop it. You might be saying, why would they put that in there? What this is it's put in there intentionally. If any of you have ever went to IKEA and you buy something that you have to assemble, someone had to make those assembly instructions. Someone had to design those shelving units or those desks, right? And they're designing the CAD package, possibly Solidworks. I don't know. I'm just saying, it depends on whatever company uses it. But anyhow, that tool allows you to reset it each time so you can make exploded steps and show how something is to be assembled. So that's why it's there. And anyhow, let's drag this down. You could shade this if you click on the shade tool. I don't really care for my students if you shade it or not. It doesn't really matter to me. But these I don't want shaded, these additional views. Now these views here, if you control select, you could right click, tangent edge, and tangent edge with font. I want you to put that in there. Those are 5 points apiece. So if you miss those, 5 points off. And those are quite common. Some people say, oh, you're being too demanding. And I feel, though, it's very important that you know how to use all these tools. Okay, now let's go ahead and we're going to make our section view. So I'm going to select this view here. And I'm going to go to Drawing and Section View and get it right in the center. Click, hit the green check. Turn on auto hatching. Auto hatching changes the scale per part. if you want to really, if you have a lot of parts, randomized scale is really nice too. I'm going to select that. Hit OK. Just drag it over here to the right. The next thing you need to make is a detail view. So click on detail view, and right about here, click and drag out the detail and drop it there. Now there is a detail. This is worth 10 points. This needs to be a leader according to the print. If you look back at the print here, you're trying to mimic this print. Now, by the way, you can't make this print exactly like it is. Solidworks no longer has this template that you see here. Notice we have a quadrant template. This one has 5 segments that are vertical. So it's just different. That's for layout, so you can make a note and say, look in section 3 for this detail. That's why they have these like segments like this. But they changed it to quadrants like we see in the new version. So I never changed this yet, haven't updated. So don't worry if you don't get it exactly like this, but I want to see these details as is. All right, so you see there's a leader there. So make sure instead of per standard, it should be with leader. And remember, you have to have this selected. Oops. There we go. And then drag this out. Now over here, this is worth 10 points as well. Select that edge, go to annotation, and put in the center mark. That's worth 10 points. The next thing we need to do is we need to bring in a bill of materials. Now, bill of materials is automatic. So select any of the views because it's going to extrapolate the bill of materials from the view that you select, whatever parts are in it. It's going to list them in the order that you put them in. So if they're reversed, it doesn't matter to me. It just means that you dropped in your cap first in your bottle. What matters to me is that you knew how to make them correctly. So I'm going to select this view. I'm going to go to, first I have to hit the green check mark there. Select that view again, tables. And you'll see there's 2 types. There's bill of materials and Excel-based bill of materials. If you have Excel on your system, it is nice to use. But the bill of materials that's built into Solidworks is very nice too. So it's whichever one you prefer. I like them both, quite honestly. I'm just going to go with the standard one. And over here, we don't need to change anything. Just hit the green check. And now click and drag that up in that corner. It should snap automatically. And now we have to put our name in it. So don't forget to put your name right here. And hit escape. So that's the note tool. Now you'll see here, if you've named it medicine bottle, it's too big and you will get marked off. I want to make sure you know how to fix this. To fix this, we looked at this before, just right click on any open area of the screen. Edit sheet format. Remember, it takes that imaginary sheet of glass off that has your views on it, enabling you to modify what's underneath. So here, oh, I named it, I have 3 T's in there. Look at that. Actually, if I just correct one of those. And this, by the way, is taken. I'm just going to delete it. And I'm going to go back to edit sheet now by right clicking, or you could go right up here. Okay. So with that, now the next thing we need to do is, let's see here, verify. Look at the print and compare. And remember, I'm looking at what's here, and also make sure your name's on it. It should be your full name. No initials, full name, please. Okay, and over here, don't worry about the C. If you want to put it in, you can. One thing you might notice, there's something right here. There's a double line. Okay, and what that is, this is extra credit. You'll notice on mine, I don't have the double line there. That's because you have to go to the sheet 1, right click, edit sheet format. Oh, I'm sorry, no. Turn that off. Just hit that little button up there, or right click and edit sheet. Right click on here, go to properties. We talked about this last week in exercise 6. And what it is, it's the first angle versus third angle projection. One way, when in America, the American National Standard, when you're looking at the bottle from the front and then it flips, you're looking at the bottom of the bottle. But in the UK or other areas, you might flip it the opposite direction. So you might be looking at the top of the bottle. And that's what I had it set to. So for an extra 10 credit points, during the test, if you could recall how to do that, hit apply, and get that double line. Now, be aware that double line is basically, remember the bottle cap is 1.9 inches in diameter. The bottle is 2 inches in diameter, so it's just slightly smaller. We're looking at the top of the bottle. So in the United States, we wouldn't see it that way normally, but I want to see that you can understand how to manipulate and change these things. If you are doing, it's a globalized world now, and you need to know how to change these things if the request is there. At this point, you could, oh, don't forget the balloons here. It's always good to look at the drawing before you go to the balloon. There's auto balloon, but for 2, just use the regular balloon tool. Click on this edge here, click there, click over here and there. Now there shouldn't be anything like this. I get drawings like that. I have to mark that off 5 points for every overlap that you have. So make sure everything is centered, it looks nice, nothing's overlapping, and then you can turn it in. And that concludes that. You would just go to File, Print at this point, by the way. And you would select your printer. I don't have a printer hooked up here. Those of you who are taking it online, be aware you can't take this test during, or you can't watch this video while you take the test. You watch it as many times in advance and practice it as you like, and then take it. And then you could save it as a PDF for me. So there is the option, File, Save As, and confirm drawing review update, hit yes. And here you would save it as a PDF. Right there. And then send it to me. And all I need is this drawing. I don't need the parts. But save the part files, because if something's missing in the drawing, I might ask you to send me the files so I could verify and try and give you the most points I can. Sometimes, like example being, I've had students where their section views, they couldn't figure out how to make the section view, and then I can't see if they've finished the 2 features on the inside. That's 40 additional points. So if you could send me the models, I could verify and give you the points for the modeling versus subtracting it. So make sure you save those and just have them on standby in the event I need them. And that concludes this exam. I would recommend taking it 3 times. Practice it at least 3 times. The more you practice it, the better you're going to be at it.